Joining us to talk about this is Republican Representative Mario Diaz-Balart. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. You called the president appeaser-in-chief and said President Obama's decision to allow the Castro regime to blackmail the United States and abandon our pro-democracy principles is an outrage. Those are very strong words, sir. But there is this question from people who support the president's move. In your mind, was the U.S. policy toward Cuba working to overthrow the Castro regime?
Remember, the policy was there for two reasons. And the one who seemed to understand that and stated what those reasons were in 2008 was President Obama, who now has contradicted himself one more time. This is another Gruber moment for President Obama. The policy is, number one, for our national security interest. You got to remember that when Castro had money from the Soviet Empire, he used it to spread terrorism. He used it to send troops to Africa, to Latin America. Heck, our GIs died fighting Cuban troops in Grenada. That has not been able to happen anymore, not because Castro doesn't want to do it, but because he doesn't have the money. That's part one. And now, of course, President Obama has done everything he can to give them the money. The second thing is, as President Obama himself stated in 2008, it's the leverage so that when the Castro brothers are no longer around, which shouldn't take too much longer, they're already in their 80s, it's the leverage to have a transition towards democracy. Because remember, the sanctions are there until just three things happen. Free all the political prisoners without exception, not the ones that President Obama and Raul Castro decide are the ones that they want to free. Number two is allow for some basic freedoms, freedom of the press, labor unions, political parties, and then number three, democratic elections. President Obama stated in 2008 that we needed that leverage and that normalization had to be contingent because of the leverage on those conditions taking place. And then again, not unlike Mr. Gruber, once again, President Obama, in order to give concessions to a state sponsor of terrorism, and he's going to take him off that list, by the way, as another concession, he now has given the Castro regime everything that they have been asking for a long, long time.
But, Congressman, I'm curious, what about the president's assertion that it is time for a change? This is a starting point. It is a new era. It is not 1961. It is 2014. You have a new generation of Cubans. You have a new generation of Cuban Americans that are looking to see change there. And we have international partners that have been pressing for change in our policy towards Cuba.
You know, there are some that say that we should not have sanctions against, for example, Iran, another state sponsor of terrorism. The president wasn't very keen either, but we were able to prevail in Congress to impose tougher sanctions. There are some that believed that we should have never had sanctions against South Africa. And I believe that was a very dark moment in the history of the United States when we didn't have sanctions towards South Africa. And I believe that if you ask the president, he probably agreed with the sanctions against South Africa. We have a regime that's on the state sponsor of terrorism list, including President Obama's administration, has put them on that list year after year. We have a regime that is harboring American fugitives, including, for example, one who's on the FBI's most wanted terrorist lists. So these are not just fugitives. These are terrorists who are harbored by the Castro regime. President Obama has not demanded that they be returned to the United States for for sentencing. We have a regime that continues to murder its people, that continues to use every means that they can to hurt U.S. national interests, and the president's attitude is no problem. Things have changed. Things have changed in Europe, but they haven't changed in North Korea. They haven't changed in Cuba. And again, President Obama himself stated that we needed the leverage in order to guarantee a transition to democracy when the Castro brothers are not there. But now he has folded to pressure. He has conceded to blackmail. And this is a sad day, not only for the Cuban people, for those who are working for democracy around the world, but frankly, we're also abandoning our principles, and the president has broken his word one more time.
Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart, thanks so much for being with us. Appreciate your time, sir.